Think honestly. What happens to most men after marriage? Not to the illusion, not the dream, but to reality. Their friends disappear. Their hobbies become selfish. Their solitude, once a space for growth, becomes suspicious. Their free time ceases to exist. Their income, regardless of who contributes more, becomes shared, and control over it is often taken by someone else. Is that a coincidence? Or maybe architecture? Is it possible that modern marriage wasn't designed to liberate, but to domesticate? Women, consciously or not, understand one thing: a man is most useful when his alternatives vanish, when he has nowhere to run, when his outside world becomes a desert, and home the only oasis. That's why over time, his choices shrink. Decisions become joint, and his life subordinated. It's not tyranny, it's subtlety, a system that doesn't use violence, but emotion, not chains but values. The desire to be a good husband, loyalty, responsibility, love, all of it gets used against him. Pay attention to the language: to tie yourself down, to trade freedom for stability, to take the first step toward maturity. Have you noticed that all these phrases share a common denominator? Subordination. A man doesn't step into marriage, he gives himself to marriage. And it's not just about words, it's about a hidden mental structure that for centuries has encoded a single message: your value as a man depends on how much you're willing to give up of yourself. At first, everything looks different. There is love, passion, sex, shared interests, mutual admiration, but that doesn't last forever. It's the initiation phase. Over time, sex becomes a negotiation tool. Interest in you becomes dependent on your usefulness. The sense of we is replaced by you have to. Things that used to be spontaneous become conditional. And most importantly, you start to change. Unconsciously, you begin to give up what used to define you: your friends, passions, solitude. All for the good of the family. But no one tells you that if family means destroying your individuality, then it's not a relationship, it's a simulation. What's happening to you isn't a single blow, it's drip by drip. Every compromise seems reasonable, but together they create a new identity, the identity of a man who stopped being himself. And even if you try to rebel, you feel guilty, because you're not supposed to be selfish, because a real man sacrifices himself, because family is the most important thing. That's how social programming works. Your rebellion becomes proof of guilt, and your loyalty the foundation of your own enslavement. Psychology calls it learned helplessness. You know the feeling: you try but nothing changes, so you stop trying, you become passive, you give up on yourself to avoid conflict, and the whole system applauds you. Religion tells you to love like Christ until the death of your ego. The media shows you the image of the perfect father, tired but devoted. Society congratulates you on your maturity, and your buddies, they've already gone through it. They can't admit they've broken, so they keep telling you it's worth it. But worth it for who? This doesn't mean women are bad. It means women are feminine. Their behavior isn't rooted in malice, but in biology. For millions of years, women had to secure resources. They had to build protective structures, and they still do it today more effectively than ever. The problem isn't that. The problem is men's naivety. The belief that it's enough to be good, faithful, supportive, that loyalty will be rewarded with unconditional love. But that's an illusion. Love in the marriage system is transactional. You no longer have value because you're unique. You have value because you serve a function. And now the question: does that mean every relationship is a prison? No. But only if you know the rules of the game. If you are aware. If you don't count on a fairy tale, but negotiate a contract. If you don't give yourself away in exchange for a promise of forever. After Schopenhauer wrote that the greatest disappointments come from false expectations. Don't expect a relationship to give your life meaning. Make sure you have meaning outside of it. Don't expect your sacrifice to be rewarded. Make sure you don't sacrifice what makes you. Love can be beautiful, but only when it doesn't become a strategy of domination. Only when it doesn't take away freedom. Only when it doesn't demand your soul in exchange for a fleeting warmth. If you see yourself in this description, if you felt the weight of these words, it's a sign that it's worth stopping. reflecting, starting to reclaim the space you gave away without a fight, not to rebel, but to be yourself again. The modern narrative about relationships is built on one word: equality, equal rights, equal duties, equal responsibility. But when you look closely at reality, the quiet, everyday, unnamed reality, you'll see something entirely different. Notice how often equality ends where invisible social pressure begins. It's the man who has to get his act together. He's the one who can't fail. His crisis, emotional, spiritual, existential, becomes inconvenient to those around him. Because a suffering man is a man who has ceased to be useful. So, no one asks, "How are you feeling?" Only, "Have you fixed it yet?" Equality ends where a man tries to say, "I've had enough," because then he hears you're overreacting. Everyone goes through this. It's normal. And normality has become a mask for suffering. The greatest sin of a man in society isn't violence, not infidelity, not even weakness. The greatest sin is telling the truth about his inner world. A man who admits he feels invisible. A man who says he's tired of playing the role of provider, hero, mechanic, and therapist all in one. A man who says he no longer feels like himself. That man becomes a problem, not because he says something wrong, but because he disrupts the narrative that holds the system together. So men stay silent, silent out of humility, silent out of fear, silent because they don't know if they're even allowed to speak differently. But silence is not strength. It's the slow erosion of identity. When a man seeks answers, where does he end up? On the internet, with coaches, influencers, alpha males, gym podcast bros. And what does he hear? Be better, make more money, train, dominate the game. Don't be better. These are not answers. They're a new language for the same trap. Instead of sacrifice yourself for your family, he hears sacrifice yourself for success. Instead of make your wife happy, he hears get 10 women. In both cases, it's the same goal. Do anything, just don't confront yourself. Just don't ask, "Who am I really?" when no one wants anything from me. Reclaiming yourself is not about escape. It's not about revenge. It's not about rejecting relationships. It's about reconstructing your inner structure. Before you enter a relationship, before you start investing your energy into another person, ask yourself the questions no one ever taught you. Are my boundaries clear? Can I say no without feeling guilty? Do I know what truly makes me happy regardless of others' opinion? Is my voice truly mine, or just an echo of other people's expectations? Because only a person who knows their own sovereignty can enter a relationship without losing themselves. Maybe what we need today is to rewrite the definition of masculinity, not as toughness, not as success, not as silent strength, but as the ability to be yourself even when the entire world expects something else. You don't have to be the man who always has it together. You can be the man who knows when to walk away, who doesn't enter relationships that destroy him, who doesn't confuse loyalty with self-erasure. This is the new masculinity, not the one shown in commercials, but the one that begins in inner stillness, with the decision, "I will not give myself up in exchange for approval." In the end, it's worth returning to where it all began: philosophy. Because philosophy at its core isn't an academic word game. It's a tool of emancipation. Schopenhauer, Nietzsche, Jung. All these thinkers understood that society needs control systems, and that one of the most powerful systems is love, the kind you're not allowed to analyze. That's why philosophy is not a luxury. It's a rescue line, a way to pull yourself out of a game that was never yours, to look at the world beyond illusion, even if it hurts. Maybe this video made you angry, maybe you felt attacked, maybe you're asking yourself, does love even exist? Good. Because the questions that truly hurt are the only ones that matter. Love can exist, but not as blind devotion, not as a performance of the ideal husband, not as a transaction hidden behind the word forever. Love can exist only when two people are free, and only when they can leave, and yet choose to stay. Not because they have to, but because they want to. The modern man is not afraid of loneliness. He has never truly experienced it. From his earliest years, he is surrounded by noise, family expectations, the culture of success, peer pressure, and later relationships in which there is no room for silence. Silence in which he could finally hear himself. It's not about physical loneliness, it's about spiritual loneliness. A time in which no one tells you who you're supposed to be. But loneliness today is a luxury. People enter relationships not out of love, but out of fear. Because they don't know what a life looks like that isn't filled by someone else. Because when you are no one's reason for being, there's nowhere left to hide. Culture has taught us that we are halves that must connect to become whole. That the meaning of life is to find the other person who will complete you. But if you believe that only with someone else you become whole, then you're already a slave, because the one who gives you that sense of wholeness can also take it away. And then you become an emotional hostage. Jung wrote that a person reaches wholeness only when they unite the opposites within themselves: masculinity and femininity, light and shadow, strength and weakness. That means one thing: you don't need another person to be whole. You need courage to look at your own incompleteness and stop running from it. Existential philosophers, Sartre, Camus, Kierkegaard, understood something the modern world doesn't want to hear. Man is free to the limits of pain. You have the right to choose a life that conforms to no expectations. You may have no family, no children, no partner, no career, and still be a full, legitimate human being. But this freedom is terrifying, because if you don't do what others expect of you, you have to answer yourself, why do I live? And that answer won't be ready. You won't find it in advice books or memes about the love of your life. You must build it in solitude, from fragments you find in pain, loss, silence and time. And that is the hardest thing, because it means taking responsibility for your existence without escaping into another person. There is one more trap no one talks about: the desire to be chosen. Most men don't want love. They want proof that someone has chosen them, that they matter, that they are worth something, that they are someone to be desired. That's not love. That's the need for validation. And the need for validation leads straight into emotional dependency. Because if your sense of worth depends on someone else's choice, you're no longer yourself. You start to act, to adapt, to fulfill expectations, just to avoid being left behind. But no one loves a mess, and so you get left anyway, just later, and even more empty. In a world that expects you to constantly react, silence is a revolution. You don't have to respond to every provocation. You don't have to prove anything to people who want to trap you in predictable reaction. You don't have to explain your decision to live differently. Silence is a choice. It's a form of self-mastery. It's a declaration: I won't give you my anger, my energy, my time, because you're not worth it. In that silence, freedom begins. True freedom. Not the kind that comes from social approval, but the kind that doesn't need witnesses. And what about love? Does it even make sense in all of this? Yes, but only when it's a choice between two sovereign beings. Not halves, not souls needing rescue, not people who want to heal each other. Love is not a game of addiction. It's the meeting of two freedoms that do not suppress, possess or train one another. It is closeness without captivity. It is intimacy without condition. And that is the rarest kind of relationship, because it requires maturity. And most people enter relationships just to avoid growing up. I don't want to give you ready-made answers. I don't want to tell you this is how it is, or this is how you should live. Because if you do something because you were told to, you're still not living your own life. I want to leave you with a question. A simple one, but a brutal one. If you woke up tomorrow alone, no family, no partner, no kids, no career, no friends, who would you be? If you don't know, you are not free. And until you answer that question, every relationship will be an escape, every feeling a transaction, every sacrifice just another brick in the prison you're building for yourself. So stop looking for answers in other people's eyes. Start looking in the mirror. Because only when you see a person there who doesn't have to be anything to anyone will you understand that you are truly yourself. And only then will you truly be able to love. One of the greatest traps men fall into is the belief that being needed means being loved. They behave like the foundations of a house, invisible, quiet, irreplaceable, as long as the house stands. But as soon as it no longer meets expectations, they are replaced like a broken structural part. Because it was never about them. It was about the role they played, the function they served. And many don't even notice when they stop being a person and start being a servant. Only when they leave do they hear questions no one asked before. How could you? Why did you do it? You had everything. No, they didn't have everything. They had a function, and that's not the same as having a life. Our entire culture is built on the romantic myth that somewhere out there is a person who will complete you, that true love is unconditional, That if you're good enough, someone will love you so deeply that you'll forget all the pain you've ever felt. But that myth destroys men, because it makes them believe in a transaction. If I give it my all, if I am patient, loyal, resourceful, tender, responsible, then I will be rewarded with love. But love is not a reward, it's a projection. And a projection can vanish faster than it was created. When it collapses, the man is left with nothing. Not because he was bad, but because he was playing a game whose rules he didn't understand. A man's silence terrifies women. Not because it's dangerous, but because it's unpredictable. A man who doesn't seek approval, doesn't fight for attention, doesn't get pulled into emotional games, isn't afraid of being alone, is a man outside control. And modern relationships are often built on control, hidden beneath the appearance of emotional closeness. That's why so many men experience gaslighting, not because their partners are bad, but because they don't understand silence as a form of being. A man's silence is a death sentence to a system that demands his reactions, sacrifices, and predictable emotions. One of the rarest yet most noble male abilities is the art of leaving with dignity, not in anger, not in drama, not to hurt someone, but because he knows he's no longer where he's meant to be, that the relationship no longer helps him grow, that the space he once breathed in has become a cage. Leaving with dignity is not escape. It is a manifestation of the courage to be yourself, even if no one likes it. It's the ability to say, I won't stay just because you didn't expect me to leave. I am not a hostage to your expectations. I will not burn myself so that you can feel warmth. A man who knows how to walk away doesn't lose. He finally reclaims himself. In a time when everyone plays a role, says what they're supposed to say, does what's expected, being yourself is a luxury. It's not about rebellion. It's not about loneliness. It's not about hating women or the institution of relationships. It's about something much deeper, the right to be a human being with your own rhythm, thoughts, values, and needs, even if they don't fit into any template. That is the essence of freedom, not having to adapt just to avoid being alone. Because being alone with yourself is sometimes the greatest form of freedom, and living in false closeness, the deepest form of slavery. Maybe this film wasn't what you expected. Maybe it didn't give you ready-made answers, didn't offer a recipe for relationship success, didn't promise you the love of your life. And that's good, because this isn't a film for those seeking comfort. It's a film for those who have the courage to look at what others turn away from. For men who want to stop being useful and start being alive. For those who are tired of breathing through the filter of expectations. For those who understand that silence is the beginning of everything. You don't have to believe what you've heard here, but if something resonated within you, then maybe, for the first time, you started to hear your own voice. And if that happened, then this film has fulfilled its purpose.